Welcome to another episode of the Amid the Mess podcast. Today I spoke with Kriss Hendy, who is all about avoiding injuries while doing endurance sports, such as running or cycling or whatever endurance activity you want to do, even walking or hiking. So Kriss and his team are all about the right strength training, the right nutrition, the right stress management in your life, whatever your life looks like, to help you do jogging, running, hiking in a way that makes it really enjoyable, allows you to reach the goals you want to reach, whether that's a park run or whether that's an ultra marathon, but to do that in a sustainable way that you can do and carry on over the years of your life. Now, Kriss has a background of sports and exercise science, of physiotherapy, of strength and conditioning, and he's been doing this for about 20 years. So he is all about this topic. Now, if you are not into running or any other endurance activity, this is interesting because it might help you think of a way that you might get into it in an injury-free way, and how you can start to build up different things in your life, such as a little bit of strength work, not too much running. There's a balance there. I won't spoiler too much, but this is interesting for both people that are into their running a lot, or people who are running curious, and then it can help you to just think of how you might get into it in a safe and sustainable way. Personally, I am really enjoying getting into a bit of jogging. I like to call it jogging because it's definitely not running. I have a 4-month-old baby, so I'm just getting back into the swing of a bit of exercise, and I do a jog about twice a week, if I can get someone to hold Daisy for me. And I found this conversation really thought-provoking because I'm thinking, okay, maybe I could do a bit more on the squats and on the warm-up before I go for my jog. So it's got me thinking of how I can do these jogs without potentially getting some kind of injury. So without further ado, I really enjoyed talking to Kriss, and I really hope that you'll enjoy listening to this episode. Why does having muscle protect us when we run?
Well, it's a natural kind of shock absorber. I think probably one of the easiest ways to kind of understand it. I mean, as we age, as we ask more of ourselves, whether we want to go faster or go longer, we want to take on different terrains. We want to kind of have adventure. However you want to define it, as we age, we are losing it. We are losing this capacity to kind of have adventure, and we're probably more susceptible to injury because of being more static in our careers. So we want to be wrapping ourselves in this lean muscle tissue as much as possible because it's just going to help us absorb all this work much better. We're going to be able to move more efficiently. And if we are relatively balanced in terms of our levels of strength across our body, it's just going to allow us to keep doing what we want to do. And I think it just depends on what you want to do with your body as to how much you need to be kind of keeping on top of it, really.
Yes, because so many people might look at an endurance activity like running or other types of stuff and think, I just need to do the running and I'll get really good at it. But you've got a slightly different approach, haven't you?
Yeah, well, it's just unpacking what that person wants. That person might want to do their first. That person might want to do their first 5K park run. They might want to do their first half marathon. They might want to do something completely off center from what they've ever done before and do an ultra marathon or a multi-day event or something. And it's like, okay, nothing wrong with any of that. It's just, what are we working with? What are we starting with? What have we done with our bodies up until that point? What have we done to them potentially? Maybe there's injuries in the past. You've done lots of other types of training. Potentially you've never done any running in the past up until this point. And essentially maybe you've just been focused on career, or you've been more academic, or you've been in the arts or something. Either way, when it comes to like getting into running, it's like, okay, what are you working with? And then just when it comes to like training, when it comes to training your running, it's just making sure that person or you are able to kind of keep doing it without fear of injury or big major setback. Because unfortunately, if you put too much volume, too much intensity into our body, and especially with running, we can easily break ourselves. And it's just, you can put yourself on the sidelines for long lengths of time, or you can get caught in a vicious cycle of injury. So, when it comes to your running, you're just trying to look into, map it out a little bit. That's it.
So what would happen if someone started running from scratch? So they'd never run before. They just thought, I want to get a bit fit, I'm going to start. But they didn't know anything about strength training, or they didn't think strength training was important. And they just started hitting the road 3 times a week type of thing. What are they likely to see happen?
They would probably respond well. They'll probably start moving relatively well. Like they shouldn't, if there's no injury setbacks or anything in the past, then they would get going and have no problems to start with. And everyone has a different tolerance, a different threshold to which they can absorb training into their body. And some people, because of their previous athletic lifestyle, like they've done other sports, they've been fairly active, maybe they've done a lot of hiking, climbing, whatever in the past, it's given them this this level of athleticism that they can lean into, and they can just go and run 5K, 10K. They can accumulate multiple runs a week for months, if not years, maybe. But at some point, the wheels start to fall off. And for some people, it's within the space of days or weeks. Some people, they start to pick up injuries and niggles further on down that line. But it's a wear and tear thing. It's an accumulation of, your body just simply is going to compensate up until a point. You're going to get away with it. And then suddenly, with age, with a wear and tear, with a down regulation in hormones, your body's going to break down on you. And that's what we're always looking to prevent. We want everyone we work with just to keep doing what they want to do, but we're constantly asking the right questions as, right, are we fueling enough, hydrating enough, strength training enough, adjusting your training? Just because if you want to do more, you've got to make sure you're doing more in those other areas to maintain it. Yeah.
Yes. So it sounds like actually this is not necessarily an issue for beginners if you have a generally active lifestyle, but it's if you have been doing an endurance sport for a long time and it starts to creep in and actually maybe is that a kind of
right? I mean, it depends on the individual. It really is a wonderful thing. It depends on the individual. Like someone who doesn't have any athletic background would still potentially be okay for a time, but then there'll be a surprise niggle, injury, setback, and it will come from and it will come from just the fact that they've gone into it with an area of weakness, they're unaware of, and it could be from a previous injury that they haven't rehabilitated, or it could be just from a level of deconditioning. They've been sat on their bum for the last 10 years in their career, or they've been a mum.
Which makes many of the sitting on a bum bit makes many of us.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and it's just well, the way we work is that we don't want any surprises, and it's understanding, like, as you're progressing through potentially a 12-week program, or you've got a 6-month kind of run into the next event that you want to take part in, you can remain consistent, and there's not going to be anything that's going to catch you out. And having that brief understanding at the beginning of that, or when you start to start running, you go, right, what is this going to look like over the next 6 months? Do I know that I'm relatively strong enough across my body? Do I know what my nutrition potentially needs to start to look like as I add more training into my week? My recovery, what does that need to look like? Do I need to be stretching more? Do I need to be kind of working on my soft tissue, so like rolling, etc.? But like just under my blood health, we talk a lot about that SFE here. Going through the menopause, if you're on contraception, if you've just had a baby recently, like, physiologically, are we in a good place to start putting a load of training into our body, or do we need to get on top of a few things first? So, there's a couple of, I like to think, logical questions you want to be asking yourself before, as you start to build in more running.
Absolutely. So you mentioned a few scenarios, and it's like you say, it's different for every person in the situation that they are in at that point. So let's take a woman, maybe perimenopausal, maybe menopausal. If they want to start running, or if they have been running for a while, are there any specific recommendations you could give that woman?
Yeah, I mean, getting a baseline understanding of yourself, like what So for instance, if I was working with someone, it's gaining an understanding for us as a coach who's about to start giving that person a load of, more running sessions. Like, what does this person need to be dialing in on within the next couple of weeks, next couple of months? Is it some form of blood test just to find out, making sure that, okay, what is a hormonal status right now? Are we dealing with someone that maybe need to be supplementing or need to be making some adjustments within their nutrition just to make sure that they are, they're in a good place. They don't have low iron, low ferritin, their estrogen levels relatively in a good place. Or are they starting to exhibit some perimenopausal symptoms? If so, is their sleep going to be compromised? Is their recovery going to be compromised? Is their ability to produce or create lean muscle tissue? We talked about lean muscle earlier on, but if you're hormonally kind of in a place where you're starting to downregulate in these areas, you're moving into menopause, that ability to obviously maintain good lean muscle tissue, to generate lean muscle tissue, to then also just recover, like that is all going to be compromised. That is a level of empowerment. Understanding where you are in that cycle from day one is going to prevent those setbacks in the future where you are innocently just training, but these symptoms are getting worse. These things are starting to, you're not feeling like you're recovering as well. You feel like more fatigue is building up. You're not seeing the results that other people are seeing. Well, actually, it's just because right at the beginning of that conversation, there wasn't a couple of key questions asked, and it was just, are we in a good, how are you getting on? How are you physiologically? And obviously, it's not just quantitative, it's qualitative. How are you? How are you tolerating this training? How is your sleep? Like, there's so many, I think, important questions that need to be asked within those first few weeks of starting a training program to really make sure someone stays consistent. So I would certainly say gaining that type of understanding from day one would be very powerful, both yourself and the coach.
Yes. Oh, sorry, excuse me. I think there's like a builder next door. There's a bit of a sound in the background. But so for that woman, perimenopausal, say, so you do a whole screening, but what about now for our listeners? Are there some key recommendations that you could give?
Well, as soon as you start to run more, like, it's understanding that you are putting more load and stress into the body. So are you aware of any obvious strengths or weaknesses physically that you need to be working on? There's some nice easy ones for us to be thinking about, like making sure you're working on your balance, your coordination, your single leg strength, you're working on your core strength, your posterior chain, so your hamstring and glute strength, all those kind of key muscle groups that are going to support your running. Logically,
okay, so
sorry, go on.
So I'm hearing, so I'm thinking posterior chain, single leg, so visualizing what that is. So squats, single leg squats, kind of. I'd love my listeners just to get like some takeaways, what practical things could they potentially try to do?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, sort of working on some basic goblet squats, split squats. You're looking at lateral box step ups, or chair, taking a chair or a low coffee table, working on lateral step ups with weights if possible. Working into your upper body strength, so kind of kneeling shoulder press with a light weight. Just working that holistic kind of approach to like working on your strength and conditioning. If you can progress it into weight load bearing exercises, we would always get someone working towards 25% of their body weight, 50% of their body weight. Some people skirt this. They don't call people out enough on how strong you need to be able to run fast, run far. Like, you can't afford to be weak in many areas if you want to run fast or run long, because the weakest part of us will end up becoming like a bit of an Achilles heel. It'll be the place that you probably keep picking up injuries in. So there's a real why as to what you need, why you want to be identifying quite quickly at the beginning of a program as to what you need to be working on, for sure.
Which areas of your body are the weakest, the muscles?
Yep.
It's interesting that you say even upper body. A lot of people might not think, oh, if I want to run well without injuring myself, I have to work on my upper body strength as well.
Yep.
Why is that?
We don't work in isolation, right? Like, our bodies, we can't afford to be weak in any of our, in our body, because it's going to, when you watch someone when they're starting to fatigue, break down in running form. So like, one of the most important things we can think about whether we want to run ride, swim, it's maintaining a certain level of movement efficiency, movement economy. If you don't want to take away the romanticism of the sport, but what the outcome is that whether you want to go fast, you want to go long, you're looking to maintain that form that you have at the beginning all the way through that distance, that event, that time frame. So having the strength and conditioning to hold good shape, good form is so important. Now, if you don't focus, if you're very weak upper body in comparison to your lower body, where's that first place that you're going to start to fall apart? You've got to start to lose position through your head, through your shoulders, through your arms.
You start to slump.
Yeah, and you start to, and you mechanically start to wilt almost, and you start to fall apart. One of the main ways of maintaining good cadence or good kind of metronome beat is pumping the arms and maintaining good form, chest up, head up, shoulders back. If you've ever had good coaching or you've heard good coaching cues, they'll talk about these things. But if you don't have the strength and conditioning in place to maintain these coaching cues, doesn't matter what people say to you, oh, do this, do that. If you don't have that physical strength inbuilt or developed, you're just going to keep collapsing. And it's the same thing with lower body strength, making sure, you're constantly looking to maintain these kind of efficient movement patterns, as it were. And so for us, it's a holistic approach. We want to make sure that someone is relatively strong across the board with more of a focus on lower body, potentially more, etc. So it's a whole body sport for sure.
It's so interesting to hear. And I think a lot of listeners might have not realized how important whole body strength is for running, because so many people start running and they just, okay, that's what I do to get good at running. I go running and I do more running. And then they get maybe injured. I say that although I love running, so I'm not throwing any shade on running. But there are some common injuries like plantar fasciitis. I was interested about that one. And there's a few more common ones like shin splints and runner's knee and a few things like that. Are there any specific things that you could explain that lead to these injuries and that people could do to avoid those?
Some of these injuries are ones that people love to try and spot fix. But the most empowering things, and again, it's about empowerment, education, understanding the why behind the reasons. Like, instead of sat in front of someone who's just trying to help spot fix this issue, which then likely is going to move to another area or it's going to come back again, empower the person to understand the why. The why is these are poor loading mechanics. Like, you are overloading these areas. They are impact issues. So you think about plantar fascial issues, Achilles issues, calf issues, shin splint issues, patellofemoral knee pain issues. A lot of people are pounding out there because they lack the adequate strength and conditioning in other major muscle groups to spread the load. And so a lot of people who suffer from these sorts of injuries, you can 9 times out of 10, if you were to screen them or just look at their levels of strength and conditioning in some of their other major muscle groups away from their area. So hamstrings, glutes, single leg strength, their ability to jump and land with confidence. Every time we screen these areas for some people, lo and behold, there's massive weaknesses. They don't have. And so without the support from those major muscle groups, what we're then going to be doing is just overloading other areas. And below the knee, there's a reason why I think it's like 70% of running injuries are the knee and below. But look at a lot of runners, and they will have very deconditioned lower bodies. They won't have much.
Little legs, little running legs.
Yeah, but they'll have a lot of them will have well-developed quadriceps potentially, like etc. But look at their bums, look at their hamstrings, and they won't have much going on there. And it's there. It's speaking volumes. But what we find is that these people who are struggling with Achilles, plantar fascial issues, calf issues, they've been doing calf raises. They've been doing lots of balance and coordination exercises from their physios, but no one's been holding them accountable to the bigger stuff. Right, let's get into developing more power in your body, in your hamstrings, in your glutes, in your core, with your squats and your deadlifts, and then get stronger, really, really stronger.
Heavy weights.
Heavier. People
heavier.
Get turned off sometimes, but you've got to be thinking those 5 kilo dumbbells, those 10 kilo dumbbells, you're starting to get somewhere. No, let's think double. Let's double that. Think half your body weight in your hands. You weigh 50, 60 kilo, 20 kilo in each hand. Like, this is stuff that you think, really? But
I like hearing that. Sorry, just interrupt you. One of my pet peeves is pictures of women with tiny 1 or 2 kilogram dumbbells in their hands. And I'm like, really? You're definitely stronger than that. Like any person is stronger than that. So I love what you're saying. Actually, you've got to try and break the image of what you think you can lift.
Just think how you've just got to keep bringing someone back to like those interval sets you're doing, your hill sets you might want to be doing, even just like you're going out for 5K, how much work are you putting through your legs? How much load and impact are you putting through those legs? It's not light. You're not light by that point. If you're running at your 10K, 20K into a run, you're out on the trails, you are pounding the pavements, as they always say, but you're putting a lot of impact and force through those legs. If you are flirting with weights, you're never going to be creating enough stimulus in that muscle tissue, in those tendons and ligaments to make significant change. So for us, it's like, no. Like build up confidence, but very quickly you start to grow out of those paperweights, as it were, and you go, no, this is what your body's going to start to respond to. And this is where you see that it's when you really start to see a change in people, is when you start to elevate their understanding around how strong they need to be. Yes. There is a ceiling. There is definitely a ceiling with some people where, how strong do you need to be? Honestly, like there is a 50% body weight, 75% body weight. When you start to get to those numbers with your squats and your deadlifts and your split squats, etc., you're in a very good place. And very quickly, if you've got a nice comprehensive program, you're probably going to notice that your symptoms are starting to dissipate, especially if you're injured. It's because you are suddenly using more muscle tissue from elsewhere in your body. You've suddenly got more to work with, more hamstrings, more glutes, etc. Just to kind of dumb it down a little bit. But essentially, you're getting your body to work more efficiently. Yeah.
And I imagine this translates right through all the ages. Is that right?
Absolutely. Of course. Yes. Like you've got young, if we want to say kind of 25 and below, who are still kind of going through maturation. They're still kind of working out, their bodies. You're still trying to organize their bodies and trying to get to that peak state. But then if let's say 25 to 35, you're in peak athletic condition potentially.
I don't feel like that right now, but hey.
Give or take, depending on what your training looks like. But then 35 plus, however you want to define it, like things are changing quick, and down, as I said, if things are starting to down regulate, again, the emphasis then comes back to, right, I need to get my house back in order. I need to start strength training. So, but
I think then it might be especially important. I think 35, 40 plus and beyond, maybe 50 plus, 60 plus, in the later years, say 60, 70 plus, an endurance activity would be walking, wouldn't it?
Yep.
People love going walking, but actually keeping your body strong then with resistance training.
Yeah. Well, there's a wear and tear. There's a wear and tear to walking, right? People can get Achilles issues, plantar issues, knee issues, back issues from what they would consider as quite a steady, easy, productive form of cardio, which is hiking. But okay, well, let's still make sure that you're keeping yourself holistically strong across the board, and you have, because you'll still have a wear and tear, and if you've got any weaknesses, they will be revealed if you're going out for a 2-3 hour walk after time. So there's still a lot of emphasis on remaining relatively strong across the board, upper body, lower body, core, single leg. Yeah.
Yes, wonderful. Music to my ears. I'm a big fan of all of this stuff, especially recommending this for as we get older. I always think it's not quite emphasized enough yet in wider culture to lift weights when you're older. But,
I think when it comes to strength and conditioning, it's also important to kind of think outside of just the strength training aspect. A good strength and conditioning program will give you better behaviors around your recovery. So like, how many people are doing some form of warm up or recovery,
I'm so guilty. I'm so guilty at the warm up aspect.
Yeah. That's what a good S&C program or strength training program will give you, better behaviors around like preparing yourself to go for a walk, for a run. And it sounds silly, but if you've been sat behind a desk or, whatever for the last 7-8 hours because of work, and then you're suddenly getting up and about to run out the door, it makes sense to have some sort of preparation. Like what are you doing? It's opening the body up, getting it ready for the work ahead. Most people don't have much of a routine for warming up or kind of recovering. But it's the glue. It's the thing. These are the little behaviors that glue these sessions together. You want to build up weeks of training. What's going to keep you doing those sessions back to back, back to back, back to back? It's those little behaviors in between. And those warm-ups and recovery, they can involve different drills, exercises, whatever your potential weaknesses might be that you've identified,
If you have particularly tight calves or weak calves, then you activate them a little bit and mobilize them, for example.
Hips, lower back. Some people it's previous ankle injuries or foot injuries, or it can often correlate. Your strength training can often correlate with your history. If you've had a history of X or a history of others, okay, well, it will make sense to bring in some drills, some exercises that are going to prepare to make sure those areas of your body are ready for the work ahead. So a good strength program should be giving you that, installing those better behaviors often, into your life. So it's not just like a standalone session. When you're integrating strength training into someone's lifestyle, it's like, okay, so Yolanda needs to kind of bring in some warm-up drills here. Maybe when she goes to bed, she could be doing a little bit of this, a little bit of rolling or massage, just to kind of make sure her body's ready for the run in the morning. There's so many little things you could be doing to just integrate and these little behaviors in. Yeah.
Okay. So for me personally, because you kind of used me as an example, I have in the past had a hamstring injury, the top tendon. So I think where it attaches on the top end, the bum end.
Yep.
Some people call this can be called yoga bum because I do a lot of yoga as well, and you can overstretch the hamstrings, I think. So for me, what would you recommend for that specific thing? Just
changing the way you train it, probably, as in, you're guilty of doing a lot of one thing that you love. And that's the same thing as a runner who wants to just run a lot. And you're like, yep, totally get it. But
yes,
a good strength and conditioning program will give you alternatives, other ways of working around said problem that's going to train those aspects of it, but just bring more support to it. So potentially with you, putting it under more focused load, actually strengthening the supporting muscle groups around it. Because the hamstring isn't a standalone piece of tissue. It's a multitude of tissues that go up into the hips. So with you, loading it with 25-50% body weight when we can, maybe reducing the range of motion for in the short term, just giving it
laying off the hamstring stretches. I've learned that.
and then not poking and prodding it. People will want to roller it and stretch it, and they think, and actually with you, it potentially is just bringing more strength to that area. And how we go about it depends on your training experience, your symptoms. But certainly I think to generically just strengthen that area without overly stretching it and overly attacking it, I would say.
Yeah, thanks. How did you get into this area of work, this interest?
20 years ago, plus 25, 30 years ago probably now, I was caught between, wasn't sure if I wanted to be a physio, a personal trainer, a teacher, and I kind of went into I got lucky. I got into a job where I was able to work in a PE department and work as a physio assistant. So I was in a gym, I was in a PE department, I was doing both coaching, teaching, working, helping people deliver training programs. Did my sports science degree off the back of that. Still wasn't sure exactly what direction I wanted to keep going in. So personal training, strength and conditioning, coaching, and just evolved. Got my teaching qualification, so I have 2 degrees in. I'm still trying to work things out, and met my wife, or my now wife, almost 20 years ago now at university, and she ended up being training full time as a triathlete for a time when we lived in Australia, and again starting to work more with endurance athletes, predominantly working a lot with injury because of the physio aspect of what I love to do. Always working very closely with physios, always working with within running and swimming and cycling and strength and conditioning, and involved the business. And it's just been it's always been part of my professional career. I just trying to navigate and we've ended up with our company called Strength for Endurance. We're a team of endurance coaches and injury specialists, physios, run coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, and now we do it with lots of different people. But it's funny how life just kind of pushes you along, and you the whole way along going, no, these are the people I want to work with. This is my interests. I'm passionate about educating, but I really want to make sure that I'm working within training still. Yeah. And then my wife very much kind of helped me push into the endurance space a lot more because of the social circle we had. And, yeah.
Yes. And she herself being an athlete, a professional athlete, you said, for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that must have been your world. So you learned a lot about it, I'm sure.
Yeah, you get to learn, understand, like, what the demands are, or, when you go to that level, when you're training full time like that, what those levels are in terms of like what's the commitment required, the discipline, the dedication required, but then the holistic side of it, like when you work, you'll see your wife who the biggest conflicts we had were eat more, recover more.
Oh, yes. That's an interesting thing, actually, you mentioned. So we haven't talked about food very much, but you're saying eat more, and that's really interesting. And it's especially relevant for women, probably men as well, I'm sure.
Yep.
But can you go into that a bit for kind of the general person who might not realize how important that aspect is?
Yeah. We talk about like bridging the gap, like fueling for performance, but it's essentially when you get into doing more training, the behaviors that you used to have or you currently have are likely going to have to improve pretty quickly. You're going to have to probably start fueling more or more efficiently or better in general, certainly more consistently if you're looking to increase your output. So if you want to run more distance, you want to train at higher intensities, that's a much greater output that you're expecting from your body. And a lot of people get caught because they're still working with the old behaviors, their old routines. They still eat the same thing, the same amounts. They're very, we're all very pattern oriented. We all stick to our same patterns. But, again, for us as coaches, we're like, no, you need more. You need more now, because we're not talking about the first few weeks of your training. We're thinking, right, we need to make sure you've got good energy availability, as we say, in the weeks, months to come. And so that's for anyone. I mean, even as someone who has never run before, who wants to do 5K in the future, your output is going to increase. And so, you're going to want to run 3 times a week. You're going to want to maybe run longer in those runs, maybe faster in those runs. Okay, your output's increasing. Do the behaviors that you currently have around your food, are they going to be enough? And some people, they get caught in this kind of gray area. They're just under fueling, and so they're under recovering. Yes. And it can be, you have to call them out and say, no, double it, do more.
And this is a difficult point for, so for example, someone wants to, they go on a fitness craze, or like, it's January or whatever, and I'm going to start running and I'm going to start dieting and, the things that society tells us to do.
Yeah.
What are the risks of that? So more running, but then less food.
Well, look, you imagine that on the graph in your mind. You've got one line going up, which is the increased fitness, increased output, and you've got the other line that's going back the other way, which is going to be crossing over. And somewhere in the middle, you're hoping that there's a sweet spot right in the middle where you're going to find that wonderful lean body, which is going to be super fit. You've kind of found that perfect body composition. You're going to look great in the mirror. But unfortunately, what happens is people can go too quick, too fast, and they end up overtraining, under fueling, and they not flatline, but they literally are they find themselves completely empty or void, and or they pick up an injury, or they literally are struggling to maintain the program that they're working from because it's just accelerating too quickly in both directions. You're trying to find that sweet spot where, yes, let's ramp things up. Let's get you doing more week on, week out, getting stronger, fitter, faster, but make sure the whole way along you're fueling adequately enough. And
because there are health risks of underfueling, aren't there? I mean, could you mention a few of those that people might not realize, because the society is so geared towards like being slim and weight loss and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there are large consequences. People don't talk enough about the impact it can have on our central nervous system, on our endocrine system, so our hormones, it can, on the impact it has on our bone density. Like it can affect our tendons and our ligaments to the point where we're becoming more susceptible to injury because we're simply operating in a deficit. We are unknowingly, and this is what's not fair. this can happen over length of months, if not years, for some people. They can get away with it almost, and then suddenly they can find themselves in a place where they are just struggling. They just seem to have one injury after another after another. They can't seem to get into third gear or fourth gear in their training or in life in general. And actually, it's because they've literally been accumulating this big old deficit. They haven't been fueling enough. They potentially haven't been taking enough recovery in their training. They've just been pushing. And then suddenly the body's like, no more, can't do it anymore. And the worst cases are people start to pick up stress fractures, and they literally have eroded away at their level of bone density. They're at a place where they are becoming osteopenic, osteoporotic
through under eating and overtraining.
Yes, and on a physiological level, they're at a place where they've unknowingly been on contraception. Hormonally, they've never been questioned on their hormonal status. They've gone through the menopause, or they're perimenopausal, so they are down regulating in hormones, or they've been on contraception for the last decade plus, and they've never had a menstrual cycle. They haven't experienced a period, a unassisted period, or a consistent number of periods month to month, and so. Again, they've been training high intensity or high volumes on a body that is not sustaining it, is not unable to sustain it, but it does until it can't. And obviously, for us as a company, we work with people who pick up stress responses, stress fractures. They are in a place where their body composition has dropped. They are very, very underweight, and even though they've come onto program for they're running at this time. They need more accountability maybe in these other areas. Okay, nutrition needs to come to the forefront. Strength and conditioning needs to come to the forefront, and we need to then moderate your running just to allow your body to catch up, because they've been doing all the things they want to do and not enough of the things that maybe they need to be held accountable to. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And it's tempting to undereat if society, if you conform to the image of kind of beauty, the standards of super thin, and you're running and all that stuff, and it's easy not to think, oh, I should actually be eating a lot more.
And that's the world we live in, the comparison, right?
Yes,
everyone has different body types, and everyone has we place these unfair expectations on what we think we should be doing. I mean, it goes, body image is the most obvious one, but people do it to themselves with their training. I heard that such and such, I need to be from such and such, I need to be running 75k a week to be able to train for this marathon, or I need to be running 5-6 days a week to be able to train to get a 5k PB or whatever it is. And you're like, who says? Like, it's just it worked for someone. It doesn't mean it worked for you.
Run your own race. Basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got people that are full-time mums, full-time working, full-time, they've got multiple full-time roles, if you know what I mean. And then they've suddenly got this they've given themselves this belief from reading something, seeing something, hearing something, that they now need to try and, if they want to do this half marathon, 10k, whatever it is, they need to do 4 or 5 days of running a week. And you're like, no, you don't. You could easily do those distances off the back of 2 runs a week, 3 runs a week, and half that mileage. But it's just very cruel. We live in a world where all these standards are being set wherever, and it's like, no, like, you're good. Like, there's no way.
Sometimes less is more, I guess.
Unbelievably. A body that cannot adapt to the training stimulus will always struggle. It's very easy to add more training to someone's plate. Like, if people just do it, just keep adding more and more. But try and give people more recovery, and there will be a lot more friction. There'll be a lot more friction to doing less.
I have to do nothing. What?
Yeah, and that's that's the art of coaching. I think sometimes that you gamify that, and you go, okay, no, you can still do something. You can go away and do some recovery work, roll, stretch and stuff. But it's like you're just almost subtly distracting someone away from the fact that, actually, no, I just want you doing a lot less so your body can recover, so then we can push you again further, harder next week after. But it's people even in this day and age where everything's, it seems obvious, but you need to, you train to break down the body, to then you've then got to allow the space to grow again. well, how is it going to grow? Well, it needs the space, the time, the fuel, the nutrients, the macronutrients, right? And but we live in a world at the moment where people are just driven to train harder and harder, but you've got to have equal care, duty of care to yourself to fuel, to recover, because that's where the adaptation occurs. That's where that's where the real change happens in that downtime.
Because when you're doing the exercise and the training, you're like you're saying, you break down everything a little bit, and then when you then rest, it recovers and gets stronger as a consequence. But you mentioned you have coached busy mums, people with loads and loads of stuff going on, mums and dads, and people with full-time jobs and 100 million things. Now, that really speaks to the theme of this podcast, because I'm trying to get a little bit of advice from experts about how to do all of this health and wellness stuff amid the mess and chaos of life, and not doing it perfectly, but just, being able to do it and not waiting for everything to look perfect. So what do you suggest for someone who is super duper busy and is trying to fit everything in? How would they do a little bit of endurance and the right amount of strength training?
Well, I think we've alluded to it a few times in this talk, where we're just sort of saying about, stay in your own lane, know what your bandwidth is, your threshold for work is. So, as identifying how much time you've got to give to said goal, you want to achieve whatever that distance is, whatever that event is, great, go for it. Let's go for it. But what do we have to work with? How much time, how much energy, how much bandwidth? Respect the fact that stress is going to be a major part of it. That's going to define how much you can tolerate, so work stress, family stress, if you've got multiple children, you've got moving house, a career, whatever, you've got lots of things going on. Still, how much time have you got to train? How hard can we work? How much training can we put into someone who is a young single professional? It's just, they can be incredibly selfish. They can just prioritize their entire life around their training and their work. It's not easy, but because they can overtrain. But young mum wants to be a good partner, a good wife, a good husband, but you also want to be a great parent, great in the workplace. You want to be, you want to pursue your career as well. Okay, manage the variables. So it's been about being time efficient and and making every session more and more effective. Looking at your running, what do I need to be achieving in these 3 runs a week? How much volume do I want to be trying to get to over the next 12, 16 weeks? So how much can I build these particular runs up? Where could I be getting extra percentage wins? Getting on top of your strength and conditioning day one, like getting on top of your nutrition day one, like understanding your blood and hormonal health. Is there any obvious wins that you could be making? I need to eat more of X. I need to be taking a bit more magnesium, whatever it is, to improve my sleep, to then improve the whole picture. So there's so many things you can get going day one that is going to allow you to then just be able to push within those lesser time frames, but to get the same result. So we're working with people that have got 5 children, pursuing a career, director of a charity. If she's listening, she'll know who she is, but she, but she's training for a 50K race coming up.
Wow.
And, it's all doable. It's just looking at that person and going, okay, or looking at yourself and going, right, don't compare with anyone else. This is what I've got to work with. I know that if I do more than this, I'm probably going to break. So let's work within those parameters and then dial in on the quality then. Don't dial in on what you need to be working on more.
Quality, not quantity.
Oh, absolutely. You don't have a choice around quantity, right? If you're time poor, you're not going to have that choice. So
yes. So how do you fit in? Because you've got 2 young boys, and I think you do like a bit of endurance sport yourself.
Yeah.
How do you manage the chaos of life with young children and still training?
Plan every day. Which is sad, not sad, but the weekends are far more loose depending on what we've got going on. But between me and my wife, the 2 boys, and running a business and everything else, it's just communication. It's communication of, right, this is what we'd like to be achieving. This is what we're trying to. I'd like to train today. I know I've got work to do. Want to be present for the boys. I want to be able to. So it's planning. It's just planning ahead. And then if you have particular goals along the way, you kind of move certain pieces around to create more time, and you sacrifice accordingly. So go to bed earlier than you probably want to get up earlier than you want to get more into the day. I mean, that's how I operate. I get up earlier, so but I sacrifice the evenings so I can. But we're generally done by about 8 anyway, because we're
you're knackered.
Knackered with two little ones. You don't have much to offer, but yeah, no, it's just it's communication and planning. Like, it's not to sound too analytical, too boring, but we have such time is our most precious commodity. There's not a much, we don't have, and energy is right alongside that. And if you want to maximize it and get the most out of it, it's just
spend it wisely.
Yeah, you just the wheels fall off so quickly when you don't communicate, when you don't plan ahead, kind of thing. You just find that you're chasing your tail so quickly. So, even like today, it was the same thing. Knowing the layout of the day, so I have good energy at the back end of the day. So making sure that I've, so it's just planning, thinking ahead,
planning, communication, and going to bed nice and early. I like that one. I'm in that camp as well.
Do you know what? Being a parent, and if sleep is, we know it's compromised from day one, right? There's no such thing as like you're never sleeping through the night again after, after you've had your first kind of thing, as in for I don't know how long now. I mean, 6 years or whatever it is now almost. But that's fine. But like, what are you doing to improve that situation?
Yes. Personally, so sleep is so important to me, and with 2 young children, I've gone off all caffeine because I feel like if I love coffee, I'm a big coffee drinker, but if I get the chance to sleep or have a nap, I want to be able to sleep. I don't want anything to be keeping me up. So that's one of my things, to maximize the sleep in the time that's given to me.
Yeah. You've got to. So same with nutrition. Like, I mean, it's hard though, because it's a balance of, again, stress and fatigue and everything else, and the other pressures you have going on in work and stuff. But, adding running into the equation, again, another stressor. Like we do it as a release, but it's also another physiological stressor. And so you've got to go, right, if I want to do that, I probably need to support that with better behaviors elsewhere. Again, nutrition, sleep, and making sure your body, you get injured along the way because you didn't do any S&C strength training because you went into it with an obvious weakness that you hope might go away. To not then train can then place more of a negative spin on things because you're suddenly not able to do the very thing that you wanted to do. So it's it's a balance. Planning. It's a fine balance. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I have a few closing questions for you. First, just a fun one. Have you got a guilty pleasure? And this can be exercise related, or it can just be completely random.
Yeah, I don't know what the connection is, but I like sour, sugary sweets. I mean, my wife drives my wife crazy because I can eat really well for long periods of time, and I'm pretty we dialed in, as it were. But I'm complete and utter. I regress completely when I'm in front of a load of like sugary sour sweets or something. So I'd say that's probably my thing. My thing.
Yeah. We all have one of those. Brilliant. My current food guilty pleasure is I'm obsessed with protein bars.
Oh.
Yeah, because I'm at home breastfeeding quite a lot. I'm just like, I want a snack. So fairly healthy snacks, but I think it's a bit too much.
Like a range of flavors, I think. The flavor profiles, I think they've got better over the years, but some of them can be a little bit, different.
Okay, so one of the last questions. How can our listeners find out more about what you do? And is there anything else you wanted to say about what you offer? I think you have a few interesting talks coming up. Would you like to mention those? Yeah, no, it'd be great to share this. We've got it's our endurance speaker series. So if you go over to strengthforendurance.com, you'll see that we're putting on a series of talks around the country. And this is not myself speaking. This is leading experts in the field. One of them's one of our key speaking events is in London. It's with Dr. Nikki Kay. That would be, if you're not aware, she'd be a fabulous guest on the podcast. But she is looking at training through the menopause. So it's obviously a very powerful, important topic because obviously it affects such a broad spectrum of women. But understanding how to navigate endurance training through the menopause, and this is happening in London.
at the Hilton in London, one of the Hiltons, and on the 25th of May. And then the other one we have is with Nicola Marsh, and she's a registered dietitian, and we're looking at the warning signs of overtraining. And this is preventing burnout, low energy availability, and this is happening at the same venue in London on the 6th of April. And but yeah, both events, so I would happily put a little discount code in for your listeners, but certainly if you can be there face to face, there's a virtual seat available as well. So all these events, we generally have like a 50-50 split of virtual attendees and physical attendees, but I think these are probably the two most powerful poignant topics, I think, from today's call. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'll put all that information in the show notes. I'm afraid the one early April will have passed by the time we publish this, but the May one won't have happened yet. So
fantastic.
Hopefully people can make that one in May.
That's right.
But so we'll finish our chat now. But thank you so much for giving me your time.
That's all right. That's been fantastic. Thanks for having me on.
So there you have it. That was Kriss on all things endurance exercise and how to avoid injuries and how to just enjoy it for as long as possible. I love what he does with his team and how he helps people. So do go ahead and have a look at his website. If you think you could use some of his help, then have a look. He knows so much. Now, if you like this episode, please let me know by giving me a little rating and review. It will really help my podcast to grow, and I would just be so happy to read it. So please, it's very easy to do on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts app. So I'm going to love you and leave you, and you'll hear from me again next week with another episode. For now, I hope you go for a little jog and maybe do a little bit of squats at home, whether it's just with your body weight or whatever, holding your child and do a squat or hold your cat. All right, before I blabber too much, I will love you and leave you. Have a lovely week. Bye.